Welcome to Enigmatic Consciousness Halloween Edition.
Hello.
Hello! I'm here with Miss Skeletony MJ.
Hi.
Hi!
How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic. How are you doing on this
I'm Peachy Keen Jelly Bean.
Halloween season's treating you well so far?
I'd say so, yes.
Okay. So I decided to do a Halloween episode because you know a lot about Halloween and
Well, thank you.
we talk on a regular basis. I really don't. I have to confess, I don't know that much, so you're probably going to be more leading this today, and I will just kind of give commentary and ask questions, and you can educate me.
Okay, I will try. Yeah, sure.
I'm just saying, my definition of Halloween is obnoxiously large boxes of candy to binge on and like movies to watch. So like I don't know much about actual Halloween traditions. That's just me. My
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I do like to incorporate part of that into my Halloween. So, yes.
well, it's like the one day of the year that's okay to be absolutely gluttonous with junk food. So
Yeah, I suppose so.
I
I was
mean,
also thinking, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
maybe Easter kind of. I don't know, but like
yeah. But
e-
the whole thing is candy. So yeah.
yeah, like you don't have a holiday where it's just candy. Like there's always like turkey or ham or some
Now
other.
that's just a day entirely dedicated to eating.
Yeah. And then like you just have Halloween that's just like I'm going to amass a whole buttload of junk food. Like they literally Halloween candy comes in boxes of like 150 candy bars. Like you can't.
All right, so what do you know about Halloween and what do you do to celebrate and what did you do as a child?
In all honesty, I wasn't really into it as a child.
Hmm.
Um Mostly because I just wasn't social at all and the thought of going I did trick or treating, but like the idea of like going up to people's doorsteps and like interacting with basically strangers scared the living hell out of me as a child.
Hmm.
So I wasn't super fond of it, but
Hmm.
if I had a good enough costume, I would kind of get into it. Notably, um, I was Thomas the Tank Engine for a couple of years.
That's
Um,
what my nephew was a couple of years ago.
I
Slash, yeah.
I was the I don't know why. The Teletubby with the penis on its head um was like my favorite Teletubby, and I
What
went out
color
for
is that one?
the green one.
Oh, okay.
He
See,
just
I never
has
watched it. I
he
don't know.
has just like a straight give me 1 second, I will show
I
you
will
a
take
picture.
your word for it, sir.
What was his name was Dipsy.
All right. I didn't know they had names. I just knew they had colors.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, like he's basically a dickhead
Yeah,
in the most literal form.
yeah.
So I went out for him 1 year. What else? I know I just basically did the really basic like cut some holes in a sheet for eyes and go as a ghost.
Hmm.
Um, was a go-to for a couple years. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
All right.
You're like, you just like you throw the sheet over top of you, you go out with your pillowcase and just go knock on people's doors, like whatever, they give you candy.
Uh,
Um, yeah. There was some novelty still to that in the 90s that I think died in the 2000s. It's a little
hmm.
there's been a lot of fear mongering with the whole trick or treating that's
Yes.
kind of been gone on, and it was kind of nice to like go around to your neighbors' houses and uh, like interact with everybody. I guess
Hmm.
again, as much as I hated the social interaction, like now I can see the novelty in it as an adult,
Yeah.
um, and I understand why my parents forced me to do it. Um, but it was always great having candy after.
I'm sorry. I'm still processing the like Halloween and force into like two words, and that those two words in the same sentence is just kind of like, wow,
Yeah, again, I
that's a
just
lot
if
for
if
me.
if Halloween could have been me dressing up in a costume and being by myself and someone just giving me a giant box of candy, I would have loved Halloween. Like, just take the social interaction out of it, and it would have been my favorite fucking holiday of the year.
You know, I'm so surprised that my introversion never took it to that level. Like,
Yeah, like, I mean, when people are like, I'm an introvert, I'm like, no, you don't understand. I was so introverted as a child that like I would tell the kid down the street who would come knock on my door and ask me to come outside to play, I would just tell them to go away. Like that's how much I did not want to be bothered with other people.
gotcha. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I've definitely I've become more social as an adult.
Hmm.
Um I feel like it's the opposite for most people where they're very social as children and then they kind of become more introverted as adults. But um well, I guess it just levels
I'm
off where
kind of I'm
you're
kind
just
of
like,
evening out. Like,
hmm?
I'm kind of evening out.
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm kind of like I can go to work and tolerate people for 8 hours.
Hmm.
That's hanging out with people for me a lot of the
Yeah,
time.
same. Yeah, that is a lot of
Um,
my social energy at my retail job. So yeah, that's like, yeah.
yeah, like I can imagine like living with friends because I would just not want to put up with their shit by the time I got home from work every day.
Hmm.
Anyways, this is totally off topic to Halloween. So yeah, I pretty much just did like very basic shit as a child. Like even now, I don't really do a lot, but again, it's my excuse to be gluttonous on junk food and um, just like watch some movies that will keep me up all night.
Hmm.
So, how about you? What was your childhood like for Halloween?
Oh my God. So I live and breathed Halloween. Like, I basically always wanted to be a part of the Addams family. So, like, that whole family is fucking goals. Um, and so I don't know. I always, since I'm a Libra and my birthday is at the tail end of September, I always had the motto that basically Halloween has begun the day after my birthday. As I've gotten older, I can't make it past July. I've gotten really bad at it,
You're
but
like, I made it to the solstice,
exactly.
the
Oh my
summer
God, that's really
solstice.
exactly. That's really gonna be. Oh my gosh, I hope not. I can't. Yeah, basically around Lamicide is when I'm start really getting antsy for Halloween.
Hmm.
Um, so with yeah, so as a kid, I was always into like the occult and stuff like that, like just naturally. We, I don't know, so I'd be like digging into like a costume box really early in September. My favorite movie growing up, two of them, was The Worst Witch with Feruza Balk, who was Nancy Downs in The Craft. Um, and then also Hocus Pocus, and then also The Craft. I mean, it's fun and practical magic, and I just loved it. And man, I don't know. So I would always, I don't know. So basically, what we would do for Halloween was, um, I gotta think of like a certain age to give you. So back when I was living up here and my grandparents parents were alive, um, we would have potato soup as a family. Like, I think they would come over. I don't remember. We would end up over there. Like they were the last stop, basically. Um, so yeah, we would sit down and have potato soup, and then we'd like get dressed, and go trick or treating, and then like for hours it felt like.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was just a really great experience. I go with my cousin and my sister. My older two siblings, they were usually over at parties or, hanging out with their friends, doing God knows what. And um, no, so I mean, it was just so much fun. And um, I only got more, I only had more fun with it as I got older. And then, like, after I moved, um, I don't know what it is. I know that I posted occasionally like that meme about what is it about like pre-teenage girls who like get really into the occult and like witchcraft and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
that's when I started to get really hardcore into it. And um just doing it more year roundish, I guess. And so nowadays what I do to celebrate, since I'm living on my own and my friends are in a different state, Halloween is usually during the week. Um, what I've done in the past is kind of like, depending on if I work that day or not, um, I'll just like come home and just start putting on Halloween movies while I'm getting dressed. And because I'll still dress up, it doesn't matter. Like, or if, I'm allowed to wear a costume to work usually, so I'll do that and I'll just kind of like freshen up. Or if I have like a double costume going on, I'll switch into that.
Yeah.
I'll like watch, I don't know, different Halloween movies or like cartoon shows or Halloween specials on YouTube, stuff like that. Maybe, and I'll pull some tarot, usually when it's dark. And then I also will make potato soup because that is what I associate with Halloween. And basically, in the most highest form of respect, basically have kind of like a dead dinner and meditate uh with my grandparents in mind and just kind of like family members that have passed. And because to me it's also like the thinning of the veil, it's like
Yeah.
at its peak and it's like you feel it. And it's just, I don't know, you just feel it. You either know it or you don't. And it just fills me with excitement and just kind of, they're just so close. um and so then yeah, I'll remember them, and then I will pack my stuff up, my ghost hunting equipment, and I will head out to the graveyard cemetery that they're buried at. And with permission, I will um I'll do my own private ghost hunting stuff and sit and talk to my grandparents. Um, because yeah, and I'll just like meditate, just chill with people out there. And also just cemeteries are one of my favorite places to be. Like, I definitely romanticize death and
Yeah.
like rotting next to your lover for eternity. God, I just already decided, like, I'm gonna, if I ever get married, it's gonna be in a graveyard. Just like, look, you in this or not? Like, this is what I mean. This is the level of seriousness I take to it. So yeah, put up or shut up. And so yeah, and then afterwards, I will go into a neighborhood around here, um, that is just, it just stinks with atmosphere. Because it's a historical society. A lot of the houses are very old. They're like 100+ years old, and they just have a sort of an electricity in the atmosphere. It's the
Yeah.
best way I know how to describe it. My great grandmother died in one of those houses, so I'll go kind of like ghost hunt around her house, even though like it's never lit up, which is so like her. It's just funny. Um, and like I just enjoy watching people enjoying their Halloween, like at different stages of their lives, whether, they're kids that are um dressing up, or it's parents that are taking their kids around, or teenagers that are pulling shenanigans and causing mischief and shit, like, or passing out candy. It's like there's all these different roles that are people are partaking. It's just so nice that it's kind of like you graduate one and go to another, and it's just you know Halloween, it's Samhain, are it's celebration of like the thinning of the veil and death and rebirth and transformation and going into dark times and going within ourselves and stuff like that. It's just very wonderful and I love it. Like it's just so nice.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And
Also, I'm sorry, hold up.
yeah, go ahead.
Also, that's like the rich, like if you walk around that area, it's also kind of gradually gets into like where the rich bitches live. And they
Yeah,
are very elaborate with their decorations. And so it is always fucking lit over there. So that's like the highest electricity, like from the laughter and like just the overall atmosphere. It's just amazing. But yeah, anyway, continue.
it does sound amazing. I get what you mean about like the area, not so much for here, but where I grew up is very much it's an older city in Canada, and there's neighborhoods where there's just these like 100 and something year old mansions, and you can just
Mhm.
feel the energy when you walk through there at night. Like it's just so heavy and electric, and
Yeah.
um I definitely agree. Like this time of year, and especially I'm finding this year, like there's been a lot of people the last couple weeks like coming into my work being like, what do you have? Because I keep waking up and there's this dude standing in the corner of my room in the middle of the night.
Really?
Yeah, like there seems
I
to be
keep
a
having
lot of
that
that
image
this
in my
year.
okay, I have not seen that, but I've like kind of had it in my mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
like we get more visitors. Like how they manifest to us is totally like whatever. But like if you're, I I'm seeing a lot of people though too who have like they haven't really experienced clairvoyance before, and
Yeah.
they're
Ooh,
like the last I'd say within the last month, like they're definitely there's a lot more of that where people are seeing shit that they haven't seen before. And I can
I
even say that too. Like most of my craziest experiences with um I don't even want to just say my craziest spiritual experiences. I wouldn't even classify some of these as spiritual because they were just like otherworldly.
mhm.
Um I think of spiritual experiences as being uplifting, not putting the fear of like everything into you. But yeah,
Mhm.
like my most terrifying experiences I've ever had have definitely been around like I would say like the middle of October to the middle of November they've occurred.
Hmm.
So um yeah, definitely like the veil thins out and things are a lot more intense, and it's there's a lot more visitors coming through. Like this is kind of like their time to celebrate too, I guess. Like they're able to
Mhm.
pass through for a little bit and say hi to people who they haven't been able to say hi to for a
Exactly.
while. And yeah, most of it's not malicious.
Right.
Sometimes it is, but you
Yeah.
attract what you put out there. So don't be a dick, and the demons won't show up at your doorstep.
Mhm. I will say, like, I see like orbs and sparkles and like glimpses of light in my periphery like all the time.
Yeah,
But I will say, uh I want to say there's been like two or three times I swear I'm starting to see ectoplasm. And like I know
yeah,
like I told, my guides like look, I don't want to be scared, like so let's like kind of gently ease into this. So I'm hoping that this is exactly what it is because I don't know about you, but I feel like I get more psychic in like the fall and the winter, but then it's
yeah.
like less so in the spring and summer. It irks me because I want that all year round. But yeah, like okay, so that's not just me, that's you also.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I would say like I don't even think it's a matter of like how much more or less psychic we are. Um I think we just get amplified by the energy coming through when the veil thins.
Yeah.
So it causes us to be more like I don't know, like it activates our gifts a lot more than say like in the dead of summer when the veil's at like its kind of like thickest point. So yeah, I definitely can agree with that. It's a lot more like I feel like a lot more like third eye energy around this time of year, and
Hmm.
definitely a lot more shit happens, and dreams get weirder, and see more. And I kind of have the same thing with like the ectoplasm, and I don't even know if it's really ectoplasm, but it's like I can see like
Mist?
if there's like a spirit in the room, like I can't see them clear as if they're solid, but I can see like the outline of like their
Yeah, the body.
yeah.
Like kind of like their aura or some shit.
Yeah,
Or
but
like
it's
their
just like
energetic body.
I can see like their whole energetic body, but I just like it's see through, but like I know it's there, and I can just kind of see like the faint glow of the outline of them.
Okay. Yeah.
Which yeah, which is what I prefer. I prefer not, like waking up and there being like a person standing in the corner. But I also have a fuck ton of cats, so I think that kind of would deter that from happening. Like I think if I didn't have so many cats, it would be
Yeah,
different.
I definitely don't fear that as much because, I frequently have my cats. At least one usually sleeps with me. There are times where, they're both not there, but for the most part, I have at least one cat with me.
Yeah, but like they're both like their energies both in your space. Like it's almost like you live in their space.
Yeah,
You just pay the
exactly.
rent.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, no. All right. So like what's kind of like your knowledge on the because I'm guessing you're more knowledgeable on this than I am, but like the kind of like the background on Halloween and kind of how things have shifted with it over the years.
Well, I could explain it, but it would be much more succinct and stay on topic if I read this. The Halloween Tarot is the book you got me for my birthday. Thank you.
You're
The
welcome.
tarot deck. So it says chapter one, the history of Halloween is really short. Okay. A wide door creaks open to reveal a dark room with hay on the floor and a sinister jack-o'-lantern casting eerie, flickering shadows on a propped up skeleton. Scary organ music swells around you. God, I just love it. Sorry. I'm so energized by this. Okay, a sheet with a cinched round head swooshes by on a clothesline, looking faintly like a ghost. You proceed to the table of doom, where you are blindfolded by a mummy and forced to stick your hands into bowls full of eyeballs, peeled grapes, question mark, and intestines, cold noodles mayhaps, as a maniacal laughter wafts from the next room. Blindfold yanked off unceremoniously, you are pushed toward a coffin where Count Dracula himself sits up and bares his unsightly fangs. As an unseen hand claws at your sleeve, you make your way quickly toward the exit. God, that's so great.
Yeah.
Um, This is a haunted house, of course, but how did this combination of creepy icons evolve to be typical of Halloween? Believe it or not, Halloween used to be a lot scarier than it is now. Today's comparatively happy-go-lucky festivities arose from an October night that was feared and dreaded when people believed that ghosts, fairies, and other evil, angry spirits might actually come from the dead and do them harm. Halloween may have originated over 2,000 years ago as a New Year's harvest festival of the Celts, a European people who lived in England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and northern France. The Celts were farmers, gatherers, and skilled metal workers who put great stock in pleasing the powers above. Whoever they believed made their livelihood possible. Since their pastoral lives were their livelihood, whoops, were tied so closely to the weather, the change of seasons took on a magical importance. So did other turning points, where the shore met the sea, when day turned to night, or when one year turned into another. On each New Year's Eve, the Celts believed the dividing line between life and death, past and future, was at its most tenuous. The end of October marked the last harvest of the year and thus the beginning of the new year on November 1st. Cattle were brought in from the summer pastures and everyone prepared for the cold winter months ahead. To celebrate this important occasion, the Celts set aside a day called Samhain, pronounced either Samhain or Sawa. Oh, I didn't know that one. All right. Um, Literally the end of summer. It was a day of exuberant harvest feast, partly to honor the sun god Baal, I assume, I'm sorry if I butchered that, who had allowed them to successfully harvest their grain. Some scholars say that Samhain was also the name of the Celts' Lord of the Dead, and that on the night of October 31st, he would send hordes of spirits back to their earthly homes for a visit. This prospect seriously frightened the Celts. Hostile fairies could trick humans into becoming lost forever in fairy mounds. Innocent children could be plucked from their cribs, and then hard-won harvest could be destroyed or stolen. Not surprisingly, the Celts did not stand idly by, waiting for the spirits to make their appearance. The Celtic priests or druids donned costumes made of animal heads and skins to frighten them away. They lit huge bonfires in sacred oak branches on the highest hills. Some say the contrast of orange flames against the black sky is where Halloween got its trademark colors. The blazing fires, visible for miles around, were believed to deter the bad spirits and guide the good spirits of their friends and family back to the Celts' hearths, where keeping piles of food were set out on tables as offerings. To further appease the spirits of Samhain, the Celts were said to have made live animal and human sacrifices, throwing the bodies into the flames. The Druid priests would then study the bones or anything else left in the ashes for hints about the future, as the transition into the new year was an auspicious time for fortune telling. If the spirits were pleased, they might help the priests see clues about the future in the charred remains. Before the first century AD, as the Celts were busy fending off potentially evil spirits and preparing for their boisterous harvest celebration, the Romans in southern Europe were celebrating two harvest festivals of their own. One was a festival for the dead called Feralia, the other a festival for Pomona, the goddess of fruits, gardens, and orchards. In honor of Pomona, the apple queen, revelers would play games, put out offerings of apples and nuts, and in the spirit of the harvest, eat plenty themselves. After the Romans conquered the Celts in the first century AD, these festivals were assimilated into the Celtic Samhain. Although later Roman emperors banned the Druid religion, the Celts clung stubbornly to their traditions. By about the 5th century AD, another influence had crept from the Roman world into the Celtic world, Christianity. The Christians did the best they could to squelch the pagan holidays and traditions because they perceived them as evil. They considered the Celts to be devil worshippers, even though the devil never existed in the Celtic religion. In their underworld, a land of eternal youth and happiness was nothing like the Christian idea of hell. Despite opposition from the church, the Celts continued to celebrate Samhain. Frustrated, the Christians decided they would have a better chance of converting the Celts if they made the dates of the new Christian holidays conform to the Celtic holidays. For example, the 800 AD, they switched the Roman Catholic All Hallows Day from May to November 1st to coincide with the Celtic Samhain. All Hallows Day, now All Saints Day, was designed to be a somber day of prayer and devotion to honor all the saints who did not have their own assigned feast day. The eve of All Hallows Day, October 31st, became All Hallows Even, that did have an N, just to make sure, which slowly evolved into the familiar word Halloween. No matter what the Christian church decreed, All Hallows Day never became a somber day of prayer for the Celts. In fact, they simply incorporated their old pagan customs into the newly created Christian holy days. Even though the church continued for centuries to take drastic measures to wipe out pagan practices, All Hallows Eve survived, complete with its Celtic and Roman influences of magic and witches, fairies and goblins, apples and nuts, bonfires, and fortune telling. Also, fun fact, one of the reasons why in Roman Catholicism, why we have saints and Protestants don't, is because it was also trying to honor how previously they had the 12 gods and goddesses,
Yeah.
that we're familiar with. And so it kind of helped them transition to that way as well. That was interesting. The colorful traditions for Halloween first came to North America when the settlers from present-day Great Britain and other Celtic regions, but not right away. The first permanent colonists of the early 17th century were strict and religious, truly puritanical, batshit, and a fucking cult nonetheless. And the idea of the suspiciously pagan Halloween was not welcomed. As a result, the rumblings of Halloween were not heard in North America until long after the United States freed itself from England in 1776. It was during the 1840s when thousands of immigrants arrived from Ireland and Scotland that Halloween really took hold. The earliest symbols of Halloween appearing in the late 1900s, or sorry, early 1900s included Scottish thistles, tartan designs, and other traditional Scottish themes. Halloween grew more and more popular, and by 1910, several American manufacturers were making or importing party products just for Halloween. Before long, there were Halloween party invitations, toy, vegetable people, postcards, noisemakers, candy bags, costumes, and party decorations, all blanketed with a good supply of witches, black cats, ghosts, skeletons, and jack-o'-lanterns. So Halloween was always a good excuse to have a party or to indulge in some real mischief, and in some parts of the United States, the fun was spread out for an extra day. I sure as shit do. The night before Halloween, October 30th, known as Devil's Night or Mischief Night, seemed to bring out the most scampish qualities of people. Most Halloween time pranks were harmless, like tipping outhouses, putting syrup on door handles, soaping windows, removing gates. Clearly just the work of goblins, and things could get worse than that. In the 1920s, and some people call them the good old days, vandalism was such a problem that the Boy Scouts and local safety boards had to take action. Some say that the practice of trick-or-treating in North America started when shopkeepers began to bribe youngsters in order to spare their property from midnight destruction. That's awesome. By the 1930s and 40s, the custom of trick-or-treating was well entrenched, and in fact, it was during this time when the phrase trick-or-treat was first used. This Halloween tradition has continued ever since, along with those that go all the way back to the Celts, the bonfires and fortune-telling, the symbols of harvest, and the preoccupation with ghosts, goblins, and things that go bump in the night. In the next chapter, you'll read about more about the myriad customs of Halloween and why Halloween is actually scarier than you may imagine. So I am not going to read an entire chapter over that again, but I will go over some stuff that I find interesting.
So can you show the cover of the book more to the camera so people know what it is? Yeah, so this is the Halloween Tarot.
Yes.
This is the book that comes with the deck. And yeah, apparently it's
Sexually bitching too.
very in-depth. Yeah, the deck is cool.
Oh, it was upside down. Whoops. Hello.
There you go. Yeah, the artwork's really interesting too because it's like super cartoony, but like it's still
Yeah.
just like it's Halloween.
Very much so. I love it. So what do you want? Like the history of trick-or-treating, jack-o'-lanterns, ghosts and skeletons, witches and black cats?
I don't know. I didn't realize that this book was so like in depth on Halloween. So like
We got fortune telling. Yeah, and that's it.
okay. I don't know. What do you wanna? I'll kind of leave it in your hands and then I'll just like edit
I
out the
think ghosts and skeletons for
in
sure, because I
betweens.
kind of know the history of jack-o'-lanterns, and it's interesting because it used to be like onions. Um, Turnips, they were turnips actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, did that. So ghosts and skeletons, I'll do that one. Speaking of souls doomed to roam the face of the earth, God, doesn't that just sound so sexy? Halloween has long been haunted by ghosts, skeletons, and other symbols of death, perhaps because it has its roots in the Celtic Samhain, when spirits of the dead were thought to be afoot. When Americans tie up bed sheets to make yard ghosts or display their glow-in-the-dark skeletons, however, chances are they aren't thinking about death in terms of anyone that you know. In other words, the skeleton in the corner of the haunted house is highly unlikely to remind anyone of their Uncle Fred. Generally, the North American concept of death and what happens after death is quite separate from how one might look upon a scary Halloween, ghost, ghoul, or skeleton. Though Mexico doesn't celebrate Halloween as we know it, it's interesting to take a look at the prevailing attitudes towards death and its symbols in one of this country's most important holidays. In some parts of Mexico, the Day of the Dead or El Dia de los Muertos fe- uh, festival takes place on November 1st and 2nd, which are All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day in the Roman Catholic tradition. During the joyous carnival-like celebration, Mexicans embrace the idea of death, including that of deceased friends and family, with gusto, humor, and even affectionate mocking. Dude, I have a ghost story that happened on a Halloween from a few years ago. I'll totally share. Hang on.
Okay.
Death's symbol of skulls and skeletons abound. People dress up in ghoulish costumes, begging for calaveras or candy skulls, and revelers can buy pan de muerto or bread of death and chocolate coffins. Oh my God. And the shop windows are calacas, small handmade clay and wire skeleton figurines that depict a vivacious afterlife where skeleton hairdressers fuss with skeleton hairdos, skeleton writers compose at typewriters, and skeleton brides marry skeleton grooms. In the midst of the playfulness, the Mexicans respectfully welcome the souls of their dead friends and family as they visit with the living for a few hours to enjoy the pleasures they once knew in life. Gravestones are hosed down and adorned with flowers, and in many households, offerings of food and drink are put out for the visiting spirits. People from many cultures around the world have special days dedicated to the dead, often linked to the fall harvest and the shift into winter. Still, it's interesting to note that for all its ghosts and skeletons and ghouls, Halloween in North America doesn't have much to do with death at all.
It's very true. Um, and I think that's kind of like what stops me from getting into it so much is that I wish we were more conscious of what we're celebrating here.
Yes,
That would be
so.
something I'd like to see kind of if we could shift more into that over time would be because it's the same with even all of the fucking Christian holidays. Like there's a reason for all of them. And it's even just to go super basic, Easter's when Jesus died, Christmas is when Jesus is born. And it's what's Halloween? It's it's candy time.
Yeah.
You know? like no, it's awesome though. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. I feel like I'm getting a full education session
Yes,
from this today too.
absolutely. So this one's pretty short. I don't mind it.
Okay.
Um, this one is Black Cats and Witches.
Ooh, yeah.
The witch, often seen as a silhouette flying on a broomstick across a full moon, is one of the most popular symbols of Halloween. We can all envision the stereotype: a cackling hag with a black cape, pointed black hat, crooked nose with mole, pointed chin, a bubbling cauldron, or if she's traveling, a broomstick. While this type of witch may be considered an imaginary being, witches, including men, women, and children, are quite real and have played rich and varied roles in many cultures since prehistoric times. The American Heritage Dictionary defines a witch as a woman popularly believed to have supernatural powers and practice sorcery, and often believed to be aided by spirits or familiar. Well, bitch, fuck yes. Witchcraft began as a way to seek knowledge about the world around us. In fact, the word witch comes from Old English word Wicca, meaning wise one. Knowledge was power, and power was often seen as magic. Those who had knowledge of plants and animals, for example, could produce medicine to help people or poison to hurt them. The witches have not always been maligned. With the rise of Christianity, they came to be considered pagan and evil. During the Middle Ages and through the 1700s, most Europeans believed that witches had sold their souls to the devil in exchange for the power to make spells and curses. People were afraid that witches were in cahoots with the devil, especially on Halloween night when all the witches in the land were to meet with him, their grand master. Thousands of anti-witch superstitions developed, from placing a knife at the bottom of a baby's cot to placing glass balls in windows to hanging mistletoe, strings of garlic, and iron horseshoes over doorways. Mistletoe, really? I didn't know that.
Mm.
All right. Witches were blamed for dead cattle, storms, milk turning sour, or whatever seemed to be going wrong at any given moment. Society went to great lengths to put an end to witchcraft. Though the witch hunts started earlier, some estimate that over 250,000 suspected witches were killed in Europe from the late 1500s to the 1700s alone. Since black cats were thought to be witches, evil helpers, thousands of black cats were killed too. Oh, the friends.
Rookies.
I know. The frenzy of the witch hunts even made its way to the God-fearing Puritans of Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. Over 150 people were arrested and 31 were sentenced to death. As is typical of so many symbols of All Hallows Eve, the familiar image of the Halloween witch pales in comparison to the history of witches, actual or alleged. And that's it. Also, what the book didn't mention is that, like, it wasn't just in Europe that, or even America, that, like, witch hunts went on. It was basically going on around the world
Yeah.
simultaneously. To this day, in different cultures, um, people are scared to death of witches and sorcery and stuff like
Well,
that.
because even in like South America, there's a lot of the
I
cultures
have,
down there. There's a lot of association with witches and
mhm.
that. Like,
I have a book from as an undergrad, for one of my courses that I was allowed to take that counted towards a credit was religion, magic, and witchcraft. I still have the book
oh
here.
my god,
If I need to go get it, I will get it. It was amazing.
sounds amazing.
Oh,
Yeah. Wow. It's just weird when you like actually dig deeper into like the real meanings behind things, and especially Halloween's one of those things that it's just like it's fucked. Like it
hmm.
really like even Thanksgiving too. It's like, you know, it's I struggle because like Thanksgiving this year was like me, my mom, my sister, and my niece, and my niece is 7, and my sister's like trying to be like, oh, like do you know what Thanksgiving's about to my niece, and like like this is when we say something we're thankful for, and like
Hmm.
I took everything I had not to chime in something about like dead Indians, you know,
Exactly.
like
It was really weird last year because, yeah, my oldest nephew is your niece's age, basically. He's 8.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so it was our first, I guess it was our second Thanksgiving together with that portion of my family. But yeah, it got really weird because he's learning about Thanksgiving and yeah, that eagerness to like educate and talk about it. And he was so he had like in his excitement of, learning a new subject and stuff like that, he made his own like pilgrim book. And I was like, wow, that is so great. That's so interesting. But did you know that you're actually Indian? Like, so that's like, what if you like, I don't know. So like, I mean, he was just like, whoa, really? And I was like, well, yeah, like we're on it from Jimama's side of the family, and blah 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 and stuff like that. So just trying to make it really lighthearted and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just kind of like, yeah, maybe look into that a little bit, like as you get older, and just like keep in
yeah.
mind, like really chill though.
Well, and I'm not necessarily saying to change how we celebrate things now, because I the concept of Thanksgiving where like you have a day where family gets together and you kind of like give thanks for what you have and like that awareness and all that. That's all fantastic. But I
Yeah.
do think it's important to be aware of like what that originally came from, because it's not at
Hmm.
all what it came from. Like it never was this innocent, oh, we're just gonna sit down and have a feast and give thanks for
Yeah.
what we have kind of thing. It was about, slaughtering an entire race of people.
Exactly.
Um, and it's
Exactly.
the same thing for Halloween. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with how we celebrate it now, but I would just like to see more emphasis on like where it came from and what it's
Mhm.
about, and even
Absolutely.
more cultures kind of more cultural traditions being kind of integrated into what we already have. So like when they talk about like how the Mexican culture is and the South American culture, and I think even in Africa like they have something along those lines as a sort of a holiday for that type of thing. I don't really know that well, but
It's in my book if there is, yes.
it's something that's kicking around in my consciousness. So I want to say that either intuitively I'm picking up on it or I heard about it somewhere at some point. I don't know. But yeah, and just like kind of understanding where it came from and um be grateful that it is what it is now and it's not what it was 400 years ago.
Oh God, dude. I'd have died an early death
Yeah.
by popping off with the wrong motherfucker.
Like you probably wouldn't even exist because
No.
your ancestors would have all been slaughtered
Yeah,
hundreds
exactly.
of years ago.
Exactly. It is interesting because since it's October and um last was this Monday? This Monday that we just had was Indigenous Peoples Day.
Okay.
Um was it last week? I don't remember. I'm losing track of time. Is We'll have to talk about that in a second. But it's very interesting because one of the women that I work with, um, she's from the Caribbean, and we were talking about Indigenous Peoples Day, and there's a few of us in the group that are of partial Native American descent, and we were just discussing, what had happened in America, how warped the education system is, and how whitewashed the history is. And it makes it sound like, yeah, it was this really peaceful event that happened, and it wasn't genocide that took place and is continuing to take place 400 years later.
Yeah.
And it was just very interesting because even though we know that Columbus had gone to the Caribbean, they're not on the same page as what we are here, apparently. Like
No.
down there, at least in her country, is it Trinidad? I don't know. Starts with a T. I'm pretty sure it's Trinidad. Um, he's still very much a hero. Um, and it's just interesting because we have different cultures and like different heritages and such different reactions to the same guy, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe they just haven't, so then we were kind of brainstorming like, well, maybe we don't know which route he took first. um and then it was kind of, well, maybe he had a change of heart, but intuitively I know it's like that's not how it happened. Like he killed all
Well,
sorts of people but it's also kind of
yeah.
like, I'm not trying to deny her reality, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like this delicate balance of like, yeah, does that make sense?
Well, it's almost like to me that even seems like regardless of where Columbus went, it just seems like someone really from like a hearsay perspective, like it was really incepted the idea into their culture that like he was
Mm-hmm.
a hero or like this certain persona that not necessarily that like it's what him being there or what he did while he was there or whatever. It's just it was like, oh, like someone heard from someone about this great guy, and then it just became known that like he did all these things, whatever. um yeah, and that's like the unfortunate thing. Like I don't trust anybody who really labels themselves as a hero because it's pretty rare that you see someone who has that label that there either wasn't some like really dark shit underneath that persona or there wasn't like that persona wasn't there to cover up like an ulterior motive.
Absolutely. Like it drives me fucking bonkers that John Smith is how do I want to say this? That like most people's understandings of Native and European interactions are based on John Smith and Pocahontas, and it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, dude fucking lied. I I don't know how to break it to you. Like, just I don't know. It was so interesting because I read a book that was written by the Powhatan tribe about her life, and it was just so different than
Oh yeah.
the glamorized Disney movie. And I mean, this is like a focal point in history. Like, um, the scene of her saving him is like a picture like like a stained glass window in like the Capitol building or something like that here in like over
Okay.
there in DC or something like that. um and dude, it's all fucking lies.
Yeah.
Like they left out so much of the bullshit that they did to her. Um it's it's just astounding and yeah, so insulting and stuff like that. So yeah, it's so weird.
Yeah. But again, like it all comes down to like people's perception of the
Hmm.
situation. Like, for example, like this is somewhat related, totally unrelated to Halloween, but whatever. It's kind of following along with what we're talking about. But I went back to my hometown last September, and um, the town that my dad and my grandma live in is like 45-ish minutes away from Windsor. But like because the way it is, like it's still on the border. It's just
Hmm.
it's not right across from like downtown Detroit.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm down there and they have like a lot of it's like a war town. There's like a whole bunch of war memorials because the like very like um deciding battle for like the War of 1812
Hmm.
um was fought there. So they still have like the old fort and stuff that they had in the war, and they have like cannons and stuff. And I went, I mean, it's really like small town tourism. Like I went to the fort and it's like $4 to go get a tour of the fort.
Wow, okay.
And they give you like a musket demonstration, and it's really whatever. It was something I was just like, as an adult, I'm like, I need to go see this place and read everything they have, because they basically turned the fort into like a museum, and then they still have the old barracks and cabins and stuff. And then I had some young kid who he couldn't have been a day over 14, gave me a
Mhm.
musket demonstration. um but I'm in
Weird.
there and I'm like reading everything, and the only reason, because the war was between Canada and the US, and the only reason that Canada won is
Oh, you did?
because, so we did, um
Okay.
because um the white Canadian war general had kind of teamed up with like a Native American tribe leader. Um, and we only won because the Americans were so afraid of the Aboriginals being savages that they basically surrendered before they actually went into battle, because they were convinced they were going to get slaughtered to death by this native tribe. And that's
Wow.
the only reason, like, I would literally be an American right now had that not happened that way, because
Huh.
basically the United States was trying to take Canada from the Brits. It's what they were trying to do.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. And I just thought that was funny when I read that literally it was just a scare tactic that
Yeah.
Canada used, and like the Americans were just so afraid of Aboriginal people that they would not go into battle with them, even though the Aboriginal people did not have like guns. Like it was basically the whole thought of like, the white people in Canada are going to teach these savages how to use weapons, and we're all
Hmm.
screwed.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think it's hilarious that like I literally would have been born an American had they not fallen for that just like fear trap,
Hmm.
because we
Interesting.
were we were fucked basically up until that point. Like we weren't winning the war. Like that's why.
Strangely, I believe it.
Even now, if you guys decided to invade us, we'd be fucked. Like
Oh yeah.
we'd be fucking, we'd be standing there going, "Let's discuss a peace treaty.
You
Peace
know
here
what?
in Canada."
That's actually also equally terrifying because with the direction that it's going, like, should we need to be rescued from anybody, we wouldn't get it. I don't think.
Well, I mean, you got to look at it this way. There's the same population in Los Angeles as there is in the entire country of Canada. So if you're going to go by manpower, we're nothing compared to you guys.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, we have almost, like, if you go by, what is it, per capita or whatever, where, like, the amount of people per squared,
Hmm.
I want to say squared kilometer, but you're going to understand that about as much as a squared moose track. So,
Yeah, my
um,
mom.
yeah, so if we go like per number of people per squared moose track, like we there's not very many people here. Um like
That's so crazy.
if we had the same population density up here that you guys had in the States for the entire country of Canada, we would literally probably have like 1,000 times the population that we have now.
That was sorry. You know what that made me think of as like horribly insensitive as I'm like laughing was when you and I were on that one episode talking about how man, just Canadians just up in arms because we had 17 shootings this year and I'm just
Yeah,
like losing it because like I mean, all
there
due
were that many
respect,
on my
but
block this week.
it's just like here in America, it's like it's a shit show all the time. So it's like, man, what we would give to have only 17
Oh
shootings. I mean,
my,
it's all
yeah,
it's all tragic, but it's like you have to find humor
it
and
is, but
darkness.
it's just like it's what you're used to, right? And that they actually had that on the news again because we've set a record in
Make it
history.
23.
Yeah, something like that. But like we've set a record for shootings in like the history of Canada for like September and October.
Damn.
Um and again, it's not like I'm not talking like street riots and thousands of shootings. It's probably it's a double digit number for the entire year still. But, you know, it's doubled since 2015.
That's
You
true.
know, that 23 is now 46 and they're complaining about how like the investigations force and the police force are going to be spread so thin and I mean like cops the salary for like a standard cop here I think is like 80,000 a year. So like they really have nothing to be bitching about.
Yeah, right.
Like our cops get paid way better than yours do as far as I know.
I have no idea, but maybe.
Yeah, I don't think cops in the States get paid like super well as
Hmm.
far as I know. Which considering how much shit they got to put up with down there, like they should be.
I don't know. I have such mixed feelings about the police. Like,
Yeah, that's a whole other topic for another day.
oh yeah.
Anyways, you said you had a scary story
Oh
from a
yeah.
few Halloweens ago.
Okay, so dude, so a few years ago, my mom and I were living in a so my grandfather, my mom's side of the family, he owned land, right?
Okay.
Because he was a businessman and he like did ranch work and stuff like that. So on one of the properties, there is a house and my mom had moved into it because there wasn't a tenant living there and she was needing to be moved back up here. So she did that. I moved up there shortly afterwards to escape my ex-boyfriend out of cross state lines, stuff like that. Um, so we were living there for a couple years, right? Um, and it's so funny because my grandfather, he never lived there. He never stayed there to my knowledge. And none of the bills would ever be in his name. There's no reason for it because he's been dead for 8 years. And my mom moved in there in 2015, right?
Okay.
So now that I've caught you up with that, it was really creepy and funny and awesome because my mom, she has like caller ID on that phone, right? And the name that had popped up was Jay uh, Branson, which that part's not really creepy because my mom, her entire immediate family of origin, everybody had the initials JJB.
Okay.
So um, Okay, so on the caller ID, the name showed up Jay Branson, and the number that was calling was the house phone number. So it was like the house was calling itself, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, my mom and I were just sitting in the living room, we were talking, and she was just like, okay, so take a look at this. And I looked at it, and I was just like, the hell, what? Um, and also, that's not the name that pops up on her phone bill. So because it shows her full name,
Yeah.
won't say my mom's full name, but yeah, so had it been her phone number that was logged in, it would have said her full first name, not just the first initial.
Yeah.
Like I said, furthermore, nobody else in my mom's family of origin has ever lived in that house or stayed in that house. So yeah, it was just very interesting. And so we picked up the phone and it was just a dial tone and like, hung up and disconnected and stuff like that. But it did that like 3 times that day at different intervals. And
Okay.
it was just kind of like, that is so something my grandfather would do because like the buffoonery that they were talking about in that book, my grandfather did. He was a prankster. Like he
Yeah.
yeah, he like had to like be talked to by cops one night with his group of friends because they were causing mischief.
Yeah.
Yeah. So man, good times. And yeah, so I don't know, man. I love shit like that.
Yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, so
Yeah, right? Yeah, for sure. Ah,
that's interesting.
love Halloween.
All right. Any other thoughts on Halloween?
It's just the best time of the year. I don't know. That's basically it. What about you? Anything else?
I don't think so. Alrighty. Well, thanks for hanging out today.
Yes, thank
It's
you.
good to catch up.
You too's. Alrighty, well, thank you so much and ta-ta.
Ta-tas. Have fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye.